Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Gaurav Sharma, and with me is Anita Anand, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment, and more. The headlines. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi exhorts universities and colleges to not only prepare degree holders but create leaders who can take the country forward. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson announces his resignation to continue till party chooses his successor. India to assume presidency of G20 from December this year. India elected as a member of Intergovernmental Committee of UNESCO's 2003 Convention for Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage for the 2022 to 2026 cycle. World Food Programme says that 6.26 million people in Sri Lanka are food insecure. Annual 5-day Hajj pilgrimage begins in Saudi Arabia after a 2-year gap due to COVID-19 pandemic. In Wimbledon, Elena Rybakina sets up women's singles title clash with Ons Jabeur on Saturday. In badminton, India's top shuttlers PV Sindhu and HS Pranoy enter singles quarterfinals of Malaysia Masters in Kuala Lumpur. And in cricket, India defeats Sri Lanka by 39 runs in the third and final women's ODI in Kandy. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated the Akhil Bharatiya Shiksha Samagam at Varanasi in Uttar Pradesh on Thursday. Addressing the educationalists in the Rudraksh Convention Centre in his parliamentary constituency, the Prime Minister said that the new education policy 2020 has been brought after broad deliberations. He said that it aims to elevate education from the narrow mindsets and link it to modern ideas. He added that the national education policy aims to link skills and education to the future requirements of the 21st century.
राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति का मूल आधार शिक्षा को संकुचित सोच के दायरे से बाहर निकालना और उसे 21वीं सदी के आधुनिक विचारों से जोड़ना है। हमारे देश में मेधा की कभी कोई कमी नहीं रही है।
The Prime Minister further said that universities and colleges should not only prepare degree holders but create leaders who will take the country forward. He said that the education system must produce the human resources which India actually needs. Mr. Modi said that the education sector is undergoing infrastructure overhaul that will make our students future ready. He added that the NEP has been brought in taking the future requirements in mind. The Prime Minister also said that the new education policy has opened the gates for learning in different mother tongues. He added that the Akhil Bharatiya Shiksha Samagam provides a platform to discuss NEP 2020 in detail. He also said that the universities and colleges must promote sports culture in their campuses. Mr. Modi said that India is making forays into sectors which were thought to be inaccessible a few years ago. He also said that India is one of the fastest growing economies in the world. He added that India has the third largest startup ecosystem.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi also inaugurated and laid the foundation stone of multiple development projects worth 1,800 crore rupees in Varanasi on Thursday. Addressing a gathering at Dr. Sampurnanand Sports Stadium, the Prime Minister elaborated on the development works being done in Varanasi. He said Kashi has showcased to the country that new age development can take place while preserving the heritage. He said the initiatives launched on Thursday will help in creating future-ready infrastructure and will enhance ease of living.
Boris Johnson announced on Thursday that he would quit as the British Prime Minister. The scandal-hit leader was left isolated as more than 40 ministers and aides, including 3 cabinet members, have quit the government since late Tuesday, demanding his resignation. The Conservative leader was confronted at various points by members of his cabinet, telling him it was time to go. Bowing to the pressure, Mr. Johnson announced outside Downing Street to quit as the Conservative leader, but said that he will continue to serve as the Prime Minister until the party chooses his successor. Mr. Johnson said that it is clearly now the will of the Conservative MPs that there should be a new leader.
It is clearly now the will of the Parliamentary Conservative Party that there should be a new leader of that party and therefore a new Prime Minister. And I've agreed with Sir Graham Brady, the chairman of our backbench MPs, that the process of choosing that new leader should begin now. I regret not to have been successful in those arguments, and of course it's painful not to be able to see through so many ideas and projects myself.
In a tweet, the Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, Justin Tomlinson, said that Johnson's resignation was inevitable. The Labour Party said that Johnson cannot stay as the PM, otherwise they will try to bring a no-confidence vote in the Parliament.
The External Affairs Ministry has said India will assume the presidency of the G20 from December this year. Briefing media in New Delhi on Thursday, Ministry spokesperson Arindam Bagchi said that apart from the summit, which India will host next year, a large number of G20 events at different levels will be organized across the country during India's presidency. Responding to a query on Prime Minister Narendra Modi wishing the Dalai Lama on his birthday, Mr. Bagchi said Mr. Modi had spoken to the Dalai Lama last year as well. He said it has been the consistent policy of the government to treat the Dalai Lama as a respected guest in India. The spokesperson added that he is accorded due courtesies and freedom to conduct his spiritual and religious activities in India, and his birthday is celebrated in India by his followers. On Boris Johnson resigning as UK Prime Minister, the spokesperson said these are internal developments. He highlighted that India has a multifaceted partnership with the UK and hope that this will continue.
In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on the expectations from the G20 Foreign Ministers meet. In conversation are Rakesh Sood, a former diplomat, and Manish Anand, a journalist.
The 2-day G20 ministerial meeting is beginning in Bali, Indonesia from today. Indian Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar is taking part there, and he already has met his Chinese counterpart, Wang Yi. The G20 Foreign Ministers meeting has, broadly speaking, twin agenda that the forum should build a more peaceful, stable and prosperous world together. It should work in that direction. And also recover together and recover stronger, that is in the backdrop of pandemic that took place for 2.5 years, and the growing concerns on economic front because inflation is rising and there is a concern in the Western world that recession can come early next year in the US, besides the ongoing Russian and Ukraine war. Ambassador Sood, the broad spectrum of the meeting is quite broad and huge mandate there. Do you think the BRICS and G7 meeting took place before this meeting? Are we anywhere closer to get the resolution to the Russian-Ukraine war, and will this meeting be of any help?
I think you referred to the two meetings, the G7 summit and you referred to the BRICS summit. I think if you look at the joint statements that have come out, they show a very wide divergence. First of all, in the G7, it is a united statement which very strongly condemns Russian aggression and also talks about the growing tensions and rivalry with China. In the BRICS statement, every BRICS member has his own position, has their own position on the Ukraine war. That is why there is no joint paragraph. There is no common paragraph in the BRICS statement on Ukraine. That shows that even within the BRICS, there is obviously not a common position. It is understandable because Russia is an involved party and China has very openly said that they have a relationship, they have a friendship with Russia that knows no limits, that knows no boundaries. So clearly in the G20, as I see it, while they will talk about the food crisis, which is supposed to have a lot of impact, especially on the poor countries, on the fertilizer crisis, which will affect agriculture even next year. They will talk about the energy crisis because of the high fossil fuel prices. But essentially, all of these will be linked to the Ukraine war. In that sense, this foreign ministers meeting is an unusual meeting. It is not a business as usual meeting.
Indeed, so you have rightly said, because the G20 meeting in Bali is taking in two sessions, and the first session will devote on the theme of strengthening multilateralism, which will discuss ways to strengthen global collaboration and build mutual trust, while the second session will focus on food and energy security. We have a backdrop that the WTO meeting took place a while back, and there they have given a few liberties that in the times of food crisis, food grains can be imported by countries which are suffering from the crisis. Now that we know Russia and Ukraine have been the wheat bowl of the world, and Ukrainian agricultural land will be infertile for at least a year or more. What steps do you think that the G20 could come out to address the food crisis which is in the making, not for a few months, but for a few years from now on?
I think the food crisis begins with the fact that there is a blockade in the Black Sea. This is a blockade that has largely been created by the Russian fleet in the Black Sea. The Russians blame the Ukrainians for having mined certain waters surrounding the Odessa port, and therefore they claim that therefore they are unable to pick up the wheat. The fact is that the wheat granaries in Ukraine are currently full and overflowing. There is about 25 million tons of wheat that is available to be sent out. New wheat the harvesting has already begun of the 2022 wheat crop in Ukraine and Russia. And most of this wheat actually goes out from the Black Sea ports because the Black Sea has been closed down. And in addition, Turkey, which controls the access through the Straits of Bosphorus to the Black Sea, has refused permission to any naval vessels to go in to the Black Sea. NATO is not in a position to provide naval escort. Russia is not in a position to pick up grains, to pick up wheat, and the Ukrainian vessels and the commercial vessels are not willing to take the risk of navigating minefields and naval conflict. So as a result, you have about 25 million tons of wheat, which may just rot. In addition, you will have the fresh crop which is being harvested, for which there is no place for storage. And then in addition to that, you have the problem of the sowing for the next crop, which is going to happen a few months later.
Jaishankar was with his Chinese counterpart, Wang Yi. They had met in the last week of March also, and the last commanders meeting had taken place in March only. Since then, there had been no meetings, but in today's meeting, they have reiterated that the diplomatic and the military commander level attempts to solve our border strife, to stabilize the border, will be carried forward. Ambassador Sood, why there was such a big hiatus, though no forward movement since March, and now we are committing again to take it further?
I think this was a pro forma meeting. There is absolutely nothing new in the statement that has been put out in the Ministry of External Affairs as compared to what has been said in the past. And the proof of the pudding lies in the eating. If we see no progress, we have seen 16 rounds of talks. If we see no progress, then clearly these meetings are pro forma meetings.
Ambassador Sood, just sticking to China for a while, because there will be another meeting for Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and there is a suggestion that Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Chinese President Xi Jinping may meet later this year. Do you think that India and China can collaborate on some of the world challenges that we are facing right now?
I think before India and China have the ambition to collaborate, they should first sort out fundamental differences between themselves, because as has been said repeatedly by the Prime Minister and by Foreign Minister Dr. Jaishankar, things cannot go back to normal if the situation in the boundary remains as it is.
Indeed. Ambassador Sood, the most important factor that the world economists are right now worried is about the prospects of recession in the developed countries, which will definitely have bearing on India also. Now that we have seen at G7 that they had come out with $600 billion of fund to finance the infrastructure projects in the developing countries, do you think that the Western countries need to do more avert this looming economic crisis?
Well, this is a crisis that has been in the making because there was severe and a very sudden economic contraction that was brought about by COVID across the world. Different economies were impacted differently. Some economies shrank by more than 7%, some economies shrank by more than 5%, and so on. As a result, the countries that could afford it, they actually provided financial support, direct benefit support. In India, we provided free food grains to people to support them in this time of crisis. This, coupled with as the recovery began, raised demand, and because the supply lines were disrupted, it raised excess demand, leading to the inflationary pressures. Today, the inflation in the Western world, in some of the Western countries, like the United States, is higher than it has ever been during the last 45 years. If we look back, the interest rates in the West were zero or close to zero. It is estimated that the interest rates may rise before the end of this year to perhaps 7%, 8%. This kind of shrinking or this kind of a monetary policy is bound to have repercussions in developing countries as well, because there is today a much greater linkage between developing countries and developed countries as well. India has already seen, we are already talking about 2 trillion rupees of foreign portfolio investment that has gone out of India during the 2022. So this is going to have an impact on India as well as other developing countries, because the risk of a global recession today is a very real risk. The question is, Western countries have deeper pockets and they will be able to manage a soft landing. Whether other countries are able to manage it or not remains to be seen.
Ambassador Sood, I would like to draw your attention to one very interesting aspect about this G20 meeting, and that is that the Russian foreign minister has also arrived in Bali, and the Western countries' ministers would also be there. But in the past, whenever the Russian FM speaks, they start leaving the conference hall. And Russia and Ukraine, they haven't been talking for a long time. So where are we headed to when there is no communication between the two countries happening?
As I said, this is going to be the major challenge. I started by saying that this cannot be business as usual, this meeting. And I think that is what we are going to see. The Indonesian president has recently visited both Moscow and Kiev, and I'm sure he would have appealed for some kind of attempt to that, because originally there was even fears that Western countries might boycott the G20 meeting this year. At least we have seen that both Foreign Minister Lavrov has reached, as also Secretary of State Tony Blinken is expected in Bali shortly. The other foreign ministers are also going to be there. The foreign minister of Ukraine has been invited to address virtually the G20 meeting. We will have to wait and see how Indonesia navigates this, because there are a number, while the G7 are united, G7 and the European Union are united in terms of imposition of sanctions together with countries like Japan and South Korea. But there are other countries like India, like South Africa and Indonesia, and of course China and Russia who are present there, who have a different view. Now, India's view is not that of China and Russia. India's view is its own view, because India has also been critical of the killings at Bucha and has asked for an independent investigation. India has also asked for a ceasefire and also sought humanitarian aid corridors to be developed so that the humanitarian crisis can be averted. Whether G7 and Russia are willing to go down this path and heed this advice will depend a lot on the diplomatic initiatives that Indonesia as the host will take to mediate this difference.
Ambassador Sood, you gave us a lot of insight on the G20 meeting at Bali, Indonesia, which is taking place at a very difficult time, that there is a war in Europe and there is economic crisis in the making. Thank you so much for talking to the All India Radio.
Thank you.
This is All India Radio giving you the news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
India has been elected as a member of the Intergovernmental Committee of UNESCO's 2003 Convention for the Safeguarding of the Intangible Cultural Heritage for the 2022-2026 cycle. In a series of tweets, the Culture Minister G.K. Reddy said that this is yet another opportunity for India to reinstate the values of Vasudev Kutumbakam. The elections for the Intergovernmental Committee took place during the two-day General Assembly of the 2003 convention held at the UNESCO headquarters in Paris, which began on the 5th of July.
The World Food Programme in its latest report said that 6.26 million people in Sri Lanka are food insecure. WFP further said it targets 3 million people to receive emergency food, nutrition and school meals until December. The statement said that the 3 in 10 food insecure households are severely food insecure, and 65,600 of the total 2 lakh food insecure households are using emergency livelihood coping strategies. On the other hand, President Godbaya Rajapaksa has said that he has asked Russian President Vladimir Putin to help his cash-strapped nation import fuel as it faces its worst economic crisis since independence from Britain in 1948. It comes after Sri Lanka's energy minister warned at the weekend that the country may soon run out of petrol. According to media reports, hundreds of people took to the streets of the capital, Colombo, on Wednesday to protest against the government.
Beijing on Thursday said that the situation at the India-China border is stable and both the countries have the capability and willingness to safeguard peace and stability in the border areas. The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson said this in response to the reports about the External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar holding talks with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi in Bali on Thursday with a focus on specific outstanding issues in bilateral relationship pertaining to the border situation. During a one-hour meeting in Bali on the sidelines of a meeting of the foreign ministers of the G20 nations, Mr. Jaishankar conveyed this to his Chinese counterpart, the need for an early resolution of all the outstanding issues along the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh, and asserted that bilateral ties should be based on mutual respect, mutual sensitivity and mutual interest.
China needs to look at India's strategies from the lens of India's own interests rather than China's relations with other global or regional players, particularly the United States. At the 10th World Peace Forum, which concluded on Tuesday in Beijing, India's former Foreign Secretary and former National Security Advisor Shiv Shankar Menon said that now some Chinese look at India through the prism of China's relations with the US rather than that of India's pursuit of its own interests. His remarks were supported by leading Chinese experts. Participating virtually in a panel discussion on the US Indo-Pacific strategy and its implications on regional security, Mr. Menon said this sort of thinking actually contributes to bringing about a polarized situation in Asia as the US-China contention is being played out in entire Asia, in the seas near China and in the Indo-Pacific, causing larger security dilemma and greater power contention.
About 1 million pilgrims from across the world are converging at Mina in Saudi Arabia as the annual 5-day Hajj pilgrimage began on Thursday. More than 79,000 pilgrims from India are participating in the pilgrimage after a gap of 2 years due to COVID-19 pandemic. The pilgrims began their journey from the holy city of Mecca to assemble in Mina. They will spend the night there and move towards the plains of Arafat at dawn on Friday for the day's main ritual of Hajj, reciting prayers.
The government of Bangladesh has directed that no decorative lights be used for social events or on community centers, shopping malls and business establishments, offices and residences to save electricity in view of the global rise in the price of fuel. The Cabinet Division of the Government of Bangladesh issued the circular on Thursday. World Kiswahili Language Day is being celebrated on 7th of July. World Kiswahili Day is celebrated on this day every year following a declaration by UNESCO member states in this regard. Kiswahili is one of the most widely spoken languages in Africa and the most widely spoken in sub-Saharan Africa.
In Wimbledon, Elena Rybakina has set up the women's singles title clash with Ons Jabeur. The final will be played on Saturday. Elena, Russian-born Kazakhstani player, reached her first Wimbledon final as she defeated the 2019 champion Romanian Simona Halep 6-3, 6-3 in the semi-final on Thursday. Earlier, Tunisian star Ons Jabeur moved into the finals, defeating Germany's Tatiana Maria 6-2, 3-6, 6-1 in a thrilling encounter at the centre court. Jabeur is the first Arab African woman to reach the finals of a Grand Slam.
In badminton, India's top shuttlers PV Sindhu and HS Prannoy have entered the singles quarterfinals of Malaysia Masters in Kuala Lumpur. Seven-seeded Sindhu cruised to the quarterfinals with an authoritative win over 2021 World Championships bronze medalist China's Zhang Yi, 21-12, 21-10 in women's singles on Thursday. In men's singles, Prannoy defeated Taiwanese Zhu Wei Wang 21-19, 21-16 to enter the last 8.
India defeated Sri Lanka by 39 runs in the third and final women's ODI on Thursday in Pallekele. The visitors scored 255 runs with the loss of 9 wickets in the stipulated 50 overs. Harmanpreet Kaur 75, Pooja Vastrakar 56 not out and Shefali Verma 49 were the top scorers for India.
In FIH Women's Hockey World Cup, India will take on New Zealand on Thursday in their final pool match. The match will be played in Amstelveen at 11 p.m. India's first 2 matches ended in a 1-1 draw against England and China.
In cricket, India have won the toss and elected to bat against England in the first T20 international match of the 3-match series at the Aegis Bowl Stadium in Southampton. Batting first, India were 45 for 1 in 4.2 overs when reports last came in. Young pacer Arshdeep Singh will make his debut, having received his cap ahead of the toss. And now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. First, let's take a look at the press reports on China. PTI reports that China has expressed hope that India will conduct the ongoing investigations into the Chinese mobile manufacturer firm Vivo in accordance with the law and regulations and provide a fair and non-discriminatory business environment to China's firms.
Fox News writes the intelligence community has warned that state and local leaders are at risk of being manipulated to support hidden agendas by the Chinese Communist Party as China seeks to target officials outside of Washington to lobby for Beijing-friendly policies at the federal level.
And now let us have a look at the press reports on Nepal. The Khabar Hub reports that newly appointed ambassador of India to Nepal, Naveen Srivastava, paid a courtesy call on Minister for Energy, Water Resources and Irrigation, Pampa Bhushal, on Wednesday. The meeting took place at the ministry in Singza Darbar.
The Kathmandu Post reports that Tibetan community in Nepal on Wednesday celebrated spiritual leader Dalai Lama's birthday.
And now let us have a look at the press reports from Balochistan. The Balochistan Post reports that the Counter-Terrorism Department has claimed that it has arrested one of the culprits of the Karachi University blast that killed 3 Chinese nationals.
ANI writes that the death toll from the heavy rainfall in Balochistan rose to 39, including scores of people missing in different parts of the province.
And now, before we end the bulletin, let's take a look at the headlines once again. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi exhorts universities and colleges to not only prepare degree holders but create leaders who take the country forward. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson announces his resignation to continue till party chooses his successor. India to assume presidency of G20 from December this year. India elected as the member of Intergovernmental Committee of UNESCO's 2003 Convention for Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage for the 2022-26 cycle. World Food Programme says that 6.26 million people in Sri Lanka are food insecure. Annual 5-day Hajj pilgrimage begins in Saudi Arabia after a 2-year gap due to COVID-19 pandemic. In Wimbledon tennis, Elena Rybakina sets up women's singles title clash with Ons Jabeur on Saturday. And in cricket, India defeats Sri Lanka by 39 runs in the third and final women's ODI in Kandy.
And now before we end, let us listen to Mahatma Gandhi's favorite bhajan, Vaishnav Jan, by artists from Georgia.
And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News. Bye.